Hello and welcome to Loppy Loves. If you haven't been here before, my name is Lauren and on this channel I talk about my life as an immigrant living in Iceland. So recently I was at a wedding back in England. One of my best friends was getting married and I'm so happy for her. And I bumped into a couple of old school friends that I haven't seen in maybe a decade. Probably about 10 years was the last time I saw them. And one of them asked me a question that I don't think I have ever been asked before. And that is, what was the biggest culture shock I had when I moved to Iceland? And I felt quite on the spot and I just couldn't answer it. I found it really difficult to give an answer. But since then I have had some time to think about it and I thought it would be a good video. So here is a list of the biggest culture shocks I had when I moved to Iceland. The first thing that shocked me just when I came on holiday to Iceland for the first time was the currency. It gets very confusing, especially coming from the UK when we just have pounds and pence. We don't have different denominations like pounds and pence, there is just the Icelandic krónu. And 1 króna is not worth a lot of money, it's a fraction of a pence in British pounds. So things here cost hundreds or thousands of krónu, and if you are buying cars or property it goes into the millions. And it's very strange when you start purchasing things in just high numbers like that. When you pay a few thousand krónu for something, it's bizarre. And that was very difficult to get used to for a while actually, and it feels like you are spending a lot more money than what you are. Obviously you are spending a lot of money because Iceland is a very expensive country, but sometimes it can feel like you are spending a lot more, or sometimes maybe spending less, and it's very difficult to just track what you are spending because of how different the currency is. One thing that shocked me within a few weeks of moving to Iceland was the midnight sun. Although I'd read about it and I knew it was coming, nothing could have really prepared me for when I was living in it and experiencing it. During the summer in Iceland, the sun is out for 3 months. We don't really get a proper nighttime for 3 months in the summer. The sun will set slightly to like a sort of twilight, but it never gets fully dark, and that is a strange, very strange thing to experience when you have come from a country which always has day and night. Like in the UK we have shorter days in the winter and longer days in the summer, but it's not quite as extreme as it is here in Iceland. When I moved here I was kind of shocked at the lack of variety when it comes to food. In the UK we have a huge variety of restaurants and different cuisines, and I guess that comes from being just a huge melting pot of cultures. But there is a high foreigner population here in Iceland, and we still don't quite have as much variety as what we do in the UK, especially outside of Reykjavik. And I have been vegetarian for over 10 years. In the UK you can get a vegetarian option pretty much anywhere, and probably multiple options at most restaurants. But when I first moved here, not everywhere had a vegetarian option, and the options were very boring and not very interesting. Now, in the 5 years that I've been here, it has improved a lot, and I think everywhere will have a vegetarian, if not vegan, option. And sometimes multiples, and they can be a bit more interesting now. And there is also more variety of food in the supermarkets, which is fantastic, because when I first moved here there wasn't a lot of choice, just different ingredients in the supermarket, and it was difficult to find some things like for example panko breadcrumbs. I use them a lot, and I had to go to a specialist Vietnamese market in Reykjavik to pick up the panko breadcrumbs, but now they are just widely available in supermarkets here in Selfoss. So I'm glad that it's improving, but that was a big shock when I first moved here. Here in Iceland, people take their shoes off everywhere when you enter a building. Most places will want you to take your shoes off. And I don't mean like restaurants or cafes, although I used to work in a cafe and some customers did take their shoes off to put their feet on the coffee table when they were inside the cafe. But at workplaces here, maybe not all of them, but a lot of them, you will take your shoes off and get changed into another pair of shoes that you just have for work. I think every job here has required me to do that. So I've cleaned a hotel, I've worked in cafes, restaurants and a factory, and I've always had to have another pair of shoes at work to get changed into when I arrive there. I also know people who work in offices who just don't wear shoes in the office. You take your shoes off at the door and just go in your socks. And also at the swimming pools here, before you even go to the changing room, there are shoe racks and you need to take your shoes off before you enter the changing room and put them on the shoe rack. And at the dentist office as well. So you don't take your shoes off for the doctors, but you do take them off for the dentist. Before you even go into the reception, there is a shoe rack outside the door and you leave your shoes there. Now, I grew up in a household where I had to take shoes off whenever I entered the house, and I still usually do that, but a lot of people in the UK, depends. Some people want you to take your shoes off and some people are comfortable with you leaving your shoes on and going into their home. So it was a big shock for me just how many places you have to take your shoes off here in Iceland. Now, this one is discussed a lot on the foreigners' Facebook communities here in Iceland. Now, it's always described as the rudeness of Icelanders. I wouldn't call it rudeness, it's just a cultural difference. But people here are a lot more comfortable just openly burping and farting in front of people and in public. And yeah, and it's strange for me. Still not used to that. Where I'm from in the UK, you just wouldn't do it. And like I said, I don't find it rude, it's just a cultural difference that comes across as rude to people from other countries sometimes. But that was very strange for me, and I don't think I'll ever get used to that. Honestly, I still find it strange after 5 years. And going on from that, it's like people here can be quite abrupt sometimes. There isn't as much of a small talk culture here. And if people have finished the conversation, they will just tell you and leave, or sometimes they will just leave. And people are usually more honest, I think, is a good way to put it. They'll just tell you what they think, and it doesn't always come across in a polite way, but it's not meant to be rude, I think. It's just a cultural difference, but in the UK we have more of a culture around small talk and being very polite to everyone, especially strangers. And in Iceland it kind of feels like there is just no need for that, so people don't do it. There is a huge reliance on cars here, and I'm from the second biggest city in the UK, and it's so just bizarre to me how much people rely on their cars. And people here don't really want to commute to work. There are some people that do, but I think they are in the minority. So I still don't have my driving licence, although I should be getting it within the next couple of days, hopefully. I have my test coming up. But when I moved from Reykjavik to Selfoss, I still worked in a cafe in Reykjavik for 3 months, and I just took the bus. There's a bus that goes to Reykjavik from Selfoss, and the bus journey is an hour long, which to me is a pretty standard commute in the UK, in the city at least. And my colleagues were shocked. Like, they just thought I was insane for commuting 1 hour to work and for not getting a car. One of my colleagues even told me that he wouldn't consider a job that was more than 10-minute drive from his house. And to me that's crazy. I think now I actually do have a very short commute to work and I've gotten used to it now. But I don't think it would bother me if I had to go back to an hour-long commute, honestly, because that's just what I'm used to in the UK. But here people are so reliant on their cars, and I have no problem getting the bus here. The bus schedules aren't great, but I don't think it's a huge issue for me. But so many people just won't even consider getting the bus. It's just the car or nothing. My first winter in Iceland, I was shocked to find out that people just leave their heating on all winter here, and if it's too hot you just open a window to let the fresh air in. In the UK our heating is really expensive, especially now with the energy crisis, but even years ago, I can remember when I was like 16, I was only allowed the heating on for 1 hour a day because it was too expensive to have it on longer than that, and I was constantly turning off the radiators in my apartment in the first winter that I was here, and my boyfriend and my roommate were just telling me, just leave them on, it's okay, you can leave them on, it doesn't cost a lot of money, and it's not bad for the environment. It's like the geothermal energy is what heats them. But I'm still like, that's still insane to me to leave the heating on all winter and not turn it off. Yeah, that was a huge shock for me actually. And I remember that was one thing that I was telling all of my friends back home, was that I just have to leave the heating on because it doesn't cost a lot like it does in the UK. Workplaces here are a lot more laid back than they are in the UK, which that is a good thing sometimes, but sometimes they are a bit too laid back here. I've worked in a couple of restaurants and cafes, and really the hygiene standards here wouldn't pass in the UK. When I used to work in a restaurant in the UK, we had to pull out the fridges and freezers and sweep and mop behind them every single night. And in like 6 months or a year that I've worked in cafes and restaurants here, I did not see that happen once. It's normally just clean as quickly as you can and leave early so that they don't pay you as much. And yeah, they're just very relaxed workplaces. And I mean, it's nicer. Well, sometimes I did feel like I was being paid to do basically nothing. And finally, probably one of the biggest shocks that I had when I moved here, although I didn't actually use it for like 18 months, so it was a bit later on after I moved here, is paying for healthcare at the point of service. In the UK we have the NHS, and healthcare is free at the point of service. You still have to pay for like prescription medication, but it's not a lot of money. But if you go to the doctors for something, if you have a surgery, basically any kind of medical procedure like that, you don't pay. Like, we do pay for the NHS in our taxes, but it's not the same thing as paying at the point of service. In Iceland, we supposedly have a huge discount on the health care that we receive, but I still think it's pretty expensive. And I know that some people from other countries will think that I'm complaining about nothing and think it's so cheap here. But when you come from a country where healthcare is free, essentially, it feels really expensive to me. I recently had to go for a colonoscopy and I had to pay almost £200 for the honour. And it wasn't really a pleasant experience, so I didn't really want to pay that for it, honestly. I personally believe that healthcare should be free at the point of service for everyone all over the world. And hopefully one day it will be, but you know, I don't have a lot of faith. But for me that was insane, like having to just pay to see a doctor. It's not a lot of money to see a doctor, but it's still weird to me to pay that. Having to pay for a blood test, having to pay for any kind of medical procedure. It's just insane. And I don't like it. I do miss the NHS. The NHS doesn't always have the best service. I understand that, but I really appreciate it and really miss it. So I think that was probably the biggest shock for me. Out of the whole list, I think that was the one that shocked me the most, actually. So that was just a short video of my biggest culture shocks that I had when I came to Iceland. If you live in Iceland or in the UK, actually, if you moved abroad to the UK or to any other country, let me know what culture shocks you had down below in the comments. And please like this video and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you in the next video. Bye!